Hello, welcome to Love Local. This is our very first episode and I'm very excited to be hosting. I'm Gail and I've lived in Bookham and Leatherhead for most of my life. It's been a truly wonderful place to grow up. I'm very excited tonight that we've got some great guests lined up for you. They're all from Bookham and the local area and we're looking at some big issues. We've got someone talking about climate change, youth, working with the older generation, and also other stories from inside the workplace. I'd love you to welcome our first guest, Mr. Paul Lambert. Hello, Paul. Welcome, welcome. Come to our wonderful improv sofa. If I could have a proper sofa, I would, but this will do for now. They're quite comfy chairs. Thank you very much for joining us. First of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your connection to Bookham? How did you end up here?
Well, we've been in Bookham as a family. I'm married to Juliet with two girls, Hannah who's 16 and Jenny who's 14. We've been in Bookham for 17 years. Yeah, I remember moving in when Hannah was about 2 weeks old, so yeah, it must be just short of 17 years.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's been a great place for kids to grow up, isn't it? Fantastic,
absolutely fantastic, yeah.
Paul, what's your role and how did you come into it?
I've got a few hats, I think, being a father, being part of this church here at Bookham Baptist, but I spend a lot of my time as a partner in a management consultancy in London, and what we do is all people work. We do work with sort of top teams, helping them to develop and work effectively together to kind of shape the organisation and the workforce they need for the future. Right. And we're working all over the place as well. I've been in Paris. I was in Paris yesterday, which was very exciting.
Yesterday, gosh.
Yeah.
We're lucky to get you then. What are you really passionate about? What really motivates you?
I think what really motivates me is I'm a Christian. I believe that faith makes a difference to every aspect of life. And I've always tried to be one of those people who kind of thinks about all of life in doing that. So how does that change what I do at work? I said about going to Paris, but we're helping them create a new business in 4 months, and it's mad. It's like 2,500 people need to be completely reshaped into this business. How can we do it in a way that looks after the people in the process? How can we make sure that people get into the right kind of jobs, that people are listened to?
So that's quite often lost in that sort of corporate process, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things I love about doing the top team work that I'm involved in is, I think recently we did one up in Scotland, and we had 10 leaders, white Anglo-Saxon males, not a kind of very diverse team. But we really got them telling their stories, why they were passionate about this business, the difference it made in this community. And we, some really heartfelt things, people's life stories. There were a couple of tears in the room as people shared some very intimate experiences of why they were doing this. And I think it's making it human, making work human, that's really key.
Absolutely. Are there any sort of examples that you can think of or a story where you've seen God really move in your work situation? Because really it's about God in your work, isn't it?
Yeah, and God in life. I just say, God is, in him we live and move and breathe. So all of life is about him. And so a couple of incidents you asked for. One, this business I've been working with, it has been absolutely full on. And I think I've really prayed it's felt almost overwhelming at times. And I've had a team of 5 people, and at times you could see the strain. One of the guys, the younger guys, was really, really strained. Another guy came onto the project, had a difficult experience before, and I think at times God's really given me grace to kind of listen to them where they're at. I think He's also given me wisdom when I've not. Sometimes I walked into this big meeting in Berlin with all their top directors. And to be honest, we hadn't had as much time to prepare. And I just did one of those little arrow prayers and said, God, help me, help me to have wisdom. And I was quite bold. I felt pushed to be more bold than I would normally be. And really challenged them about the pace they were doing this, that had they worked this out, was it in the best interest of people, the way they were doing it. And the last example is I've always felt that in a workplace, just we, as other Christians quite often have bumped into, and we've usually kind of formed a group. I'm thinking every workplace I've been in, we've formed a group just to pray for the business. We've always made a point of praying for the leaders in the business, for praying for people in the group, but also around the business who might be unwell, going through a difficult season in their life. One of my assistant was actually had to go into rehab, and really prayed for her, and she knew we were praying for her, and really appreciated it. So, yeah, it's trying to do work a little bit differently.
Gosh, that's amazing, and it's crazy to think, in a way, how you'd be doing that job, I guess, if God wasn't in the picture, yet you didn't have that support from him, that you didn't sort of have those courage in those situations, and having, being able to support your colleagues as well in prayer. That's really, really awesome.
Yeah, it's sort of, I kind of like to say, it's more when you come to the end of yourself. I was, the verse that was knocking around in my head was that one from Psalm 47 about God is an ever-present help in time of trouble. And I kind of felt over the last 3 months there's been quite a lot of times of trouble. So yeah, it's strength from beyond yourself.
Gosh, amazing. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Paul. Really, really wonderful.
That's great. Thanks, Gail.
I'm going to welcome on our second guest of this evening, Mr. Ian Caulsbrook. Welcome, Ian. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Please have a seat.
Hello, Gail.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thanks.
Good, good. I'm really excited that you're here tonight. Just give us a little idea about how long you've been in Bookham for. What do you really like about Bookham?
Well, we've been, my family and I have been here in Bookham about 15 years. We love it. I remember back in the mid-2000s, I'd moved down to southwest London to work, career change for me, and we lived for a while in southwest London. We didn't really like the busyness of southwest London, and I've always cycled to work. So I said to my wife, we'll just go and find somewhere up to about 6 miles away from Teddington, where I worked, and find somewhere where we can live. And she came back with Bookham, 13 miles away.
Get really fit, didn't you?
I did. So that went to 26 miles a day on the bike. But the great thing was that Catherine loved the high street, and particularly Brackenbury's. She came back and said, this lovely high street, she could imagine living here. And the first time we came to visit the church to suss it out, the kids loved the Sunday school, and my son Daniel, it was Daniel and Hannah, the two children in primary school then, Daniel said, when can we come again?
Oh.
And so, happy wife, happy kids, we came to Bookham, and I got a new lightweight bike out of it for commuting to work.
It's before the age of electric bikes, wasn't it?
Oh, don't need one of those yet.
Yeah, definitely. What's your role? What are you sort of really passionate about?
Okay. Well, one of the roles I've taken on as a volunteer this year is as coordinator of what we call the Creation Care Initiative here at the church. So what that's about is about helping the church to go greener. The church in terms of the buildings and the use of energy, recycling, all that sort of thing. But wider than that, how do we as a congregation, in our individual households, go greener, go more eco? And I'm really passionate about this. I said I made this career change in the mid-2000s. I came down to work for Tear Fund, a Christian Development and Relief organisation.
It's quite international development, Tear Fund,
international,
isn't it?
That's right,
Yeah.
Working with the poorest people in the world. And initially that was for me about just understanding God's compassion for the most vulnerable people in the world. But as I worked for Tear Fund, I realised that all the great things that were being done to help people to lift themselves out of poverty was being undone by climate change.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Increasing floods, famines, rising sea levels and so on could undermine all of that. And so my interest initially in the climate was from a social justice point of view, trying to do right by vulnerable people in the world. But recently with lockdown, I spent lots more time outdoors, like lots of people, and I've come to appreciate the environment, God, the nature, God's creation in and of itself, and been thinking about how God created this beautiful world for us. He asked us to look after it, and we've not been doing a great job about it.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't really heard before, you sort of started doing what you did in terms of getting churches really involved in the climate action movement. So it's quite a new sort of exciting wave that's coming along, really.
Yes, I think people have been doing things in their own way, but it's the first time I suppose we've done it in a concerted way as a church.
And in terms of sort of how that, local community in Bookham, is that sort of extending to businesses as well in terms of them being more aware of their climate footprint?
I think that's right, and it's nice to see there are other organisations in Bookham that are onto this, and it's good that Transition Bookham or Plastic Free Bookham is another great organisation that's encouraging people to go green. We've got Greenwise down in Fetcham, which encourages people to, you can go in and refill your coffee beans or your seeds or your cereals or whatever it might be, avoiding plastic. So it's a great initiative down there as well.
Fantastic. Paul, I know your family have sort of gotten a bit involved in sort of the practical things that you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. What are some of the things that your family's done?
Well, we actually did the Creation Care survey the other day. You'll be glad to know, Ian.
Yes.
I know you've been asking us about that. And I think my wife actually started the whole kind of recycling here at the church, really getting them very organised about that. And she just using products at home, really, to be honest, that you go and refill, like the Greenwise, which I think is a great idea.
Oh, amazing. So that's, a really practical outcome of what you've been up to.
No, Jules is a great enthusiast for all of this. It's great to have her on the team here at the church.
How have you seen God move in what you're doing and conversations you've had with people?
There have been lots of really great conversations started by this. People are thinking about solar power, electric vehicles, what to do when the boiler breaks down, how can we be more green, all those kind of things. But the story that really inspires me is the story of Charlotte and Daniel Pyatt. So 2 primary school children, part of a family that's part of our church community here. And Charlotte in particular has a huge concern for the future of our planet. And she's leading the way in the things that she's doing. Just recently she held a cake sale in her front garden, selling cakes to raise money to buy trees to plant in Bookham. And I think they're planting 2 rowan trees in Bookham as a result of that. She and her family, Paul mentioned the Creation Care survey. We're encouraging households in our community to do the Creation Care survey, which looks at different aspects of our environmental footprint, our food, our energy, our travel, our possessions, our garden, and that sort of thing. Great, so done that survey, and they got a silver award, which is fantastic, and want to do more. And then, during COP26, they went up and joined the climate march. As a whole family.
Wow.
And really important, the things that we can do as a church, it's things we can do as families, but also we just need the whole system to change. So going up there, speaking out, expressing their concern for the environment with their banner, walking the streets of London, true inspiration, Daniel and Charlotte.
Oh, that's so amazing. What an amazing example of the idea taking fruition, people running with it and really putting in practical changes.
And my prayer is that we will honour that. We will listen to our young people and listen to their concern for the future of our planet and act on that and honour God in the process, the God who created this wonderful earth for us.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ian.
Okay.
I'm going to welcome our very next guest, Anne. Anne, please come and join us. Lovely to meet you. It's the first time I've managed to meet you today. I'm very excited to hear about what you've been up to, which is a very different area to both Ian and Paul. But first of all, just tell us a little bit how you ended up in Bookham and what you like about it.
Well, I actually have been in Ashted for the last 30 years, which is not exactly a long way away.
Yeah.
And I lived there with my husband, Richard. And we have brought up our children in Ashted, and they're now grown up, very grown up. One of them has children of her own, and she also lives in Ashted. Goodness knows why.
Stay close to Mama.
But what happened with Bookham is, I was in Bookham about 15 years ago doing some training as a lay minister in the Church of England at St Nick's. Wow. And I liked it then. I thought this is a very nice place. And then suddenly, in the summer, the role of an Anna chaplain came up in Bookham. And I'd been thinking about Anna chaplaincy quite heavily. And, well, the story is that I'm far too old to do it, because I feel I ought to have retired. But God said, no. He said, this is what you've been waiting for.
Oh, wow. So you had a really clear
Very
nudge.
clear.
Yeah.
And plus the fact that when I applied for the job, it was after the application date. And I also have taken less hours because I don't want to work as many, because I am getting old. But it's been an exciting time, really.
For those of us who don't know what a nano chaplain is, give us a little synopsis.
I'll give you a little synopsis. It's been going, Anna chaplaincy generally has been going for about 10 years, but it grew slowly to start with and is now speeding up. In the vision is to have an Anna chaplain in every community that has the role of looking after and caring for frail and elderly old people, not to physically look after them, but to spiritually look after them and to visit and relieve their loneliness.
Oh, wow.
And it's not something they do on their own. They have volunteers that help. But the idea is that we're not attached necessarily to a particular church, but to a community.
Wow, that is an incredible role. And is that day-to-day visiting people, spending time with them, liaising with families?
It's visiting them where possible, going to the places they go, if they go to places. Golden Years here is one of the things that I visit from time to time. The meeting place, which is the organisation that employs me, actually has the coffee shop here on a Saturday, and a large number of older people come to that.
Gosh. When did you start your role?
In September, so I'm quite new.
Wow. But just after lockdown as well. And
Yes.
I just think it can't have come at a better time, really.
No.
As things are opening up, but actually a lot of older people aren't, some people aren't venturing out yet.
They are actually being quite brave,
Yeah.
because I think many of them have decided you have to die of something.
Yeah.
And when you're
Sort of
old
black humour,
already.
isn't it?
Yeah, but they are longing to have company. That is what I would say. And so they come out for company, or they give a ring. We have a telephone befriending service as well, where people can ring us up, and then one of us will go and see them.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Absolutely fantastic role, ministry. It's really exciting.
Yes.
Do you have any examples of where you've really seen God move? I'm sure you see it all the time.
Well, I must say the whole business of becoming an Anna chaplain was quite a big thing.
Yeah.
But what it made me realise was that if this is of God, He will lead off. And when I came along to the coffee shop the first time, just wearing my badge, people who don't go to church at all started talking to me about faith. Some of them had been bereaved. Some of them were just lonely, and they wanted to know what it meant to have a faith. And I'm finding that all the time, everywhere I go, which I can't say it used to be normal, but it is now.
Yeah.
It's normal.
Yeah, for sure. Paul and Ian, have you sort of had any experiences where you've thought, if only a service like this was sort of available where it wasn't? Or have you had a good experience where that has been available?
Absolutely. In my case, one of the things, my wife and I are really blessed to have two sets of parents still alive. But suddenly during lockdown, they've experienced health issues, they've been isolated, they've really deteriorated in one way or another. So that's why I've been on the motorway 6 hours today in order to go to one set of parents. And having that kind of contact and interaction and support is so important, and that's something that they have missed, I think, in this lockdown period.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Particularly when parents are separated by a distance from their children. Yeah. We've got a number of people in Bookham who you say, so where are your children? And they say, oh, Australia,
Oh, yeah.
Canada.
Yeah. If anyone's watching this and they think, oh, I'd really love to connect someone up with your service, or they're thinking, oh, that's something I could benefit from myself, how can they find you?
Well, there's several routes, really. I'm employed through the Meeting Place. So if you go on the web and look at Meeting Place Bookham, you will find it's there.
So via Google, yeah?
Via Google or any other browser. There are other browsers. Or you can go to the United Reformed Church, where my office is based. But because I work a few hours and I'm out quite a few of them, you might not find me there. But there will be somebody there who will take messages. Actually, Golden Years, if you're interested, on a Wednesday afternoon, which alternates between the United Reformed Church and here. I'm usually at one of them about once a fortnight.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
That's okay.
I'm going to invite on our next guest, Matt Downey. Come on up. Thank you very much for joining. How are you? You've got the mic.
I've got the mic. Thank you. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, I'm fine. Similar question again.
Sure.
What drew you to Bookham local area?
So rather like Ian, we were living in south-east London, or the south-east. So I'm married to Lauren, and we had Ethan at that point, who was 6 weeks old, and we decided we didn't want to live in a built-up area. So, because I grew up kind of like, not leafy Surrey, but leafy Berkshire. So that's why we moved here. I actually had friends living on the high street at the time. Our son Adam was born here as well, and by then we'd moved to Effingham. And we've been there for 22 years now.
Gosh, we all like to stick around, don't we?
We love it here, don't we?
Oh, it's fantastic. So in terms of what your role is, or what you do, tell us a bit about that and sort of how you see God in your workplace.
Gosh, so I'm in IT strategy. I help business leaders solve business problems, but doing it with technology, and I kind of look 3 to 5 years ahead, and I take a helicopter view of the organisation and kind of try and join the dots a bit so that...
It's a very strategic role.
Yeah.
Big picture.
Yeah, a lot like Paul, actually, but he's focused on people, and I'm kind of... I take the next bit along, which is focused more on data and technology. So my current role, actually, I feel that God's really led me into that role. I took voluntary redundancy in September 2019, which, I mean, that in itself is a long story, but I'll try and keep it short. I wanted to leave. I felt that I should wait, and a chap arrived who then started a Christian group. So Paul described that earlier, that he has always started groups. And I thought, okay, that's why I'm staying here. And then like 5 weeks later, we were offered voluntary redundancy. And I felt right now's the time to go. So I was a bit perplexed by that.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
Timing, isn't it?
Yeah. And bearing in mind, September 2019, so I took a couple of months off. I thought, right, January, I'll get a job. And I was very specific with God. I said, I want to be able to commute in half an hour, not the long commute into London I was doing. So I was really very narrow in my focus of what I was looking at. And of course, with COVID, that hit in early 2020, all the jobs dried up. So I actually spent 10 months out of work in the end. And I really had to learn to trust God for the future. And in the end, I had to say, do you know what, God, I'll go wherever you send me because I need a job. And he blessed me with a job in Potter's Bar. And I nearly didn't take that because it was in Potter's Bar.
It's not half an hour, is it?
Not half an hour. And my wife said, well, why don't you see if they let you work from home, which they have done. In fact, everybody's been working from home, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. And I think God's got a sense of humour, because I said half an hour, and actually all I have to do at the moment is walk upstairs and I'm in my office.
That's the shortest commute you could possibly have. And in terms of the group at your work, did that really take off straight away, or was it quite slow, or what was it actually sort of like?
So, because of that 5 weeks where we had the group at the other place, I thought, when I start, I will look for a group and see if there is one. And there wasn't. But God kept putting Christians in front of me.
Christians, as in colleagues at work who were Christian?
Christian colleagues.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, you don't tend to ask people if they're Christian. It was just, somehow it came up in conversation.
Wow.
You know, or somebody would have a verse on their screensaver or something like that you'd see in a meeting. So it was just that. It was like probably about half a dozen people I met in the first few weeks.
Yeah.
And it became fairly obvious to me that actually I was the one who needed to start the group.
Yeah.
They were all much better qualified than me. I mean, there was somebody there who'd been planting churches.
Oh, gosh.
Somebody worked at HTB previously. You know, all these people who could have done this and hadn't. So I kind of went, okay, God, assuming you'll do whatever needs doing, I'll facilitate.
Why do you think having Christians around you in work is important? In terms of being deliberate about meeting up together and praying and spending time together?
I think it's really important just to kind of bring God into your 9 to 5, because we spend so much time at work. And it just, I don't know what it is, it's just, I mean, we only meet for half an hour on a Wednesday lunchtime. But everybody seems to be really blessed just to kind of have that focus. It's like an oasis in the week, you know.
Oh, I love that description, yeah.
Yeah. And we had one lady who came for 2 weeks before she left the company. And she said as a result of that, she was going to carry on her faith journey.
Wow.
Because she'd been thinking of giving up. So, you know, you get those kind of encouragements all the time, actually. You know, it's amazing. I'd encourage anybody to start a group at work.
That's amazing, because I'd never really heard about it before I met you and Paul. I had no idea that it was even a possibility. You know, here I am sitting in my office plugging away on my own, when actually there's this whole world out there of, you know, encouragement and strength and support, and being able to support other people as well in their workplaces, and you know, building each other up. I think that's just amazing. Thanks very much, Matt. Absolutely wonderful. I mean, obviously, Paul, you're doing this in your workplace as well, and you work in a very Christian setting. Have any of you experienced where you've worked in an environment which is a bit hostile, where you wish something like that had been there?
Well, I used to work at Surrey University.
Oh, wow.
And we had a Christian fellowship for staff, as opposed to anybody else. But it was really great. I mean, it had been going quite a while, and over time we began to lay on facilities for overseas students, and we saw them come to faith in vast numbers.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Particularly Chinese ones.
Yeah, because being an international student is so different and more difficult in a lot of ways, so having that kind of support is excellent.
But it was just wonderful to see all these scientists that were Christians.
That's amazing. Well, thanks very much for that, Matt. Really encouraging.
You're
welcome. I'd love to welcome up our final guest, Jenny. Please come join us. We'll do some musical chairs. Thank you so much for joining. Hello, hello. What brought you to Bookham, the local area? What do you love about it?
Yeah, so I grew up by Epsom Downs, so I've always been kind of local. Went to Fairfield School, so that's how I came in the area. Most of my team happened to. But then I moved away for a few years, had no intention of moving back to Surrey, and a friend of mine sent a job spec for a job at Leatherhead Youth Project and was like, would you be interested? And I was like, no. and actually gave it to my housemate and was like, you should apply for this. And she was like, no, you should. So that went on for a couple months and I eventually applied. And it was only really the interview that I fell in love with the job. So actually I had no intention to do it until the interview. Yeah, there was no real plan there. And since moving back, I worked for Leatherhead Youth Project, but based in Bookham. So I ran the Bookham side of Leatherhead Youth Project.
Oh my gosh, that's
and my
absolutely
housemate
amazing.
now also works for Leatherhead Youth Project. So it all worked out in the end.
So actually, you were sort of right.
Yeah, that's what I claim. She's like, I was also right.
Yeah, and you get to be a team together, which is really, really lovely.
I realised before in that the other day, I let her do a youth talk for us. And she brought up all our uni stories about doing pranks, and I was like, oh, I thought you were joking.
Could have been worse uni stories, to be fair.
So, yeah.
No, I'm sure there's nothing. That's really exciting. What sort of brought you to working with young people? Why are you passionate about that?
Yeah, I think, well, initially I was planning on doing engineering at uni. So my A-levels are maths, physics and chemistry, maths, physics and further maths, yes, and chemistry. So I had no intention of doing youth work at all.
You couldn't be more sciencey if you tried.
No, exactly. I picked my A-levels on what didn't involve essays.
Yeah.
Turns out, if you do a theology with youth work degree, you have to do essays. So it was a complete switch. I took a gap year just for a year out. I was like, actually, I need some headspace. Having done those A-levels, I'm taking a year, worked in my local church for a year doing youth work and just fell in love with it in a way that I just never had with engineering. I loved seeing how things worked, but doing youth work was just a complete different thing. So yeah, went and did a year in Cape Town and then came back and did a degree in youth work. Turns out you can do that.
Oh, wow, gosh, that is really amazing. And how long have you been doing this in Leatherhead/Bookham?
So just over 3 years.
Okay.
So I managed a year and a half before any of the lockdowns, which was quite useful.
Yes, definitely. What are some of the challenges of your job, and what are some sort of the best bits?
Probably both sides would be young people. So one of the biggest challenges is, we did a residential recently, and when it's 1 a.m, and you've got all the discussions going on, but also any safeguarding issues that come up on trips, and just all the conversations that are happening, and you learn that young people's lives can be really tough. And so that's one of the tough parts of the job, when it's sort of 1 a.m, you've got to keep patience and still sort of provide the safe space. But then also, the pro of that is actually when you see young people making massive changes in their own lives, and you get to see actually all the video games you played have now led to all these conversations, and they're coming back to you and being like, okay, I'm applying for this job, I'm going to go do this, I've worked out this. They're the best bits. So yeah, kind of pros and cons of that side.
Wow, so you sort of see a bit of a progress. I guess because you've been there for 3 years, you've gotten to know some of the young people really well.
Yeah, and I've had the blessing of meeting young people that I went to school with who've actually gone through LYP, and they'll talk about how it changed stuff for them. So even though I've only been there 3 years, I'm meeting young people that were way before then.
Wow. Do you have any examples of where you've seen God really working recently?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones with our young people is when we are having those tough days, they'll be like, how do you keep having so much patience with us? And most of our young people don't realise our team are Christians.
That's an amazing question to ask someone as well.
Yeah, they'll just be like, oh, you keep giving me second chances, why is that? Why do you do this when we just come and annoy you? And they will, some of the older ones will come and ask you very bluntly why. And so that's an amazing testimony to us that actually it does make a difference, because we're like, we don't have that much patience. Half the time we get really frustrated.
Yeah.
So I think seeing that, but also for me, it's just knowing there's something more. Sometimes there's so many practicalities where like funding will fall through, or a team will change, or young people will sort of seem to take a step back and things, you're like, oh, it's going so well. And I think just knowing there's more to life is such an encouragement when you're having those days.
Yeah. And I guess when things aren't going well, you've got somewhere where you can put your hope and be like, actually, God's got them as well.
Yeah.
Because I know with working with young people, my job, it's only so much you can do, then you just really have to trust that you've done everything you can and God's got the rest, but it's quite hard.
Yeah, it's like if we care this much, He definitely cares about them a whole bunch more.
100%. Have any of you sort of had any really key, youth workers or anything like that really encouraged you at one point?
Yeah, I remember going to our youth group. It had 90 people in it.
Wow.
It's called Wednesday Youth Fellowship, and there was this wonderful couple, Leslie and Joy. And recently, unfortunately I didn't get there, but it was Leslie's funeral, and there were well over 100, so a couple of hundred people there, and all sharing their stories of faith, how their lives have been improved and developed, and the the places they'd gone and the changes they'd made and just the difference they were making in their world. And I just thought, you know, this was just a couple, they were both teachers. They would kind of go teach kids and do some more kids, just like you, Jenny. And, you know, they changed hundreds of kids' lives. It was amazing.
Two
you know, what a
people.
legacy.
That kind of impact
Yeah,
and
they
that
had
kind
a
of
few
legacy.
helpers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Always good to help.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's necessary, isn't it?
Fantastic. So if you're a young person in this area and they've stumbled upon this episode, what is sort of on offer for them in terms of drop-ins or support?
Yeah, so our main project in Bookham is Be Youth, and it's in St Nicholas Pastoral Centre at the moment. Obviously, we're getting a new youth centre built on Lower Road Rec, but currently, that's the great news, but currently in St Nicholas Pastoral Centre, so the churches have massively helped us out with sort of locations, which the easiest way to find it is if you go between Heads Up and Carolinas on the High Street. If you go down the alleyway, we're right at the end.
Okay.
And that's got all the video games and table football, etc., cooking. So that's Mondays and Fridays, 4:15 till 6:15.
Oh, amazing. Great. So basically after school, wander down and you'll be there.
Yeah, we're always there.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that wraps up our very first episode of Love Local. Thanks so much for joining us and look forward to the next one. Thank you very much also to all of our guests. It's been wonderful to have you, hearing your stories, being so encouraged. And yeah, I hope that, you know, you feel encouraged in everything that you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.